out after some time.
Mm-hmm.
So, Dr. Amit, you tell us when we can start.
Uh,
I think, I can get over the preliminary part. It doesn't matter if the attendance is less there. What matters is that we shouldn't run out of time, right?
right, sir. And I think this people will start, joining.
Yeah,
Keep
yeah.
joining. So we
As
can
usual,
start.
now the numbers are going up.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, Indian time is always 5 minutes, behind or something. It's okay.
okay, I think I'll start then because they get over the preliminaries and don't take much of the time.
Yes, sir.
So
Please,
here we
please.
go.
Thank you.
So, good afternoon. It's a great pleasure to welcome you all to this 49th edition of STIP lectures. We hold these lectures for the public each month in partnership with Vigyan Prasad, CEFIPRA, TERI, and India Habitat Center. The online mode has proved to be more effective in enabling wider participation within India and outside. We welcome all the attendees. Today, I have great honor to introduce our two eminent scientists. Our session will be chaired by Professor Ashutosh Sharma, who is well known. He is currently the president of the Indian National Science Academy, INSA. He continues to pursue his research and teaching as Institute Chair Professor and C.V. Sheshadri Chair Professor at the Department of Chemical Engineering of IIT Kanpur. He is the founding coordinator of DST's thematic unit of excellence on soft nano fabrication and chairman of the Center for Environmental Science and Engineering at IIT Kanpur. He is best known for his pioneering research work in the area of nanosciences. He is also co-chairing the Science 20 engagement group within the G20. In his earlier avatar, he had been the secretary at the Department of Science and Technology, Government of India during 2015 to 21. His tenure witnessed the launch of several new programs related to research infrastructure and human capacity building in many domains. He has played a pioneering and active role in crafting the National Quantum Mission, which was launched recently. Professor Sharma was born in 1961 in Rajasthan. He got his PhD from SUNY Buffalo in 1988, MS from Penn State 1984, and BTech from IIT Kanpur 1982. He has received numerous honors and awards, including the inaugural Infosys Prize in Engineering and Computer Science, the TWAS Science Prize of the World Academy of Sciences, Bessel Research Award of the Humboldt Foundation, J.C. Bose Fellowship, S.S. Bhatnagar Prize, Homi J. Bhabha Award of UGC, to name only a few out of the long list. He has many other interests such as ancient history and philosophy, poetry and art, and now travel. We thank you for agreeing to chair this session. The main speaker today is Professor Urbasi Sinha, who heads the Quantum Information and Computing QUIC laboratory at the Raman Research Institute in Bengaluru, India. She is a Simons Emmy Noether Fellow at the Perimeter Institute, Canada, as well as an associate faculty member at the Institute for Quantum Computing, University of Waterloo, Canada, and the Center for Quantum Information and Quantum Control, University of Toronto, Canada. Professor Sinha is heading India's first project on satellite-based secure quantum communications. She completed a PhD at Cambridge University, UK, on experiments in high temperature superconductivity. She completed a MSc in physics, also from Cambridge. She has been a Gates Cambridge Scholar during her PhD and a Nehru Chevening Scholar during her master's. Her scientific recognitions include the Homi Bhabha Fellowship 2017, the ICTP ICO Galliano Denardo Award in Optics 2018, the Asian Scientist for the year 2019. She has also been awarded the Simons Emmy Noether Fellowship at Perimeter Institute, Canada. Some of us would remember Emmy Noether for her famous theorem on symmetry and conservation laws. In August 2020, she led the two-member winning team as a mentor at the World Skills International Competition in Quantum Technology at the BRICS Future Skills Challenge organized by the Russian Quantum Center in Moscow, Russia, with competitors from several countries worldwide. She won the ASSOCHAM Women in Cyber Making a Difference Award in the category Cyber Leading from the Front in 2021. We warmly welcome Professor Sinha and thank her for her participation. I have now great pleasure in handing over the conduct of the session to our chair, Professor Sharma. Over to you, sir.
Thank you very much, Ambassador Balkrishnan. And it's so good to see that RIS and Dr. Sachin Chaturvedi have been conducting this webinar and before that a seminar for a very long time. And thank you, Dr. Amit Kumar, for being the anchor person here, as well as finding the right kind of speaker today for us, which is Professor Urbasi Sinha, that I have known as long as I have known quantum happening in this country at Raman Research Institute, no less. Raman was one of the pioneers of quantum himself, in a sense. So this is only right that someone from that institute is leading the charge on quantum. And so we are considering something very important today, something which has a beginning but no end, if you would. So quantum technology derived from quantum sciences of different kinds is going to go on forever. I mean, so this is all of the future. There was a time when we said that we thought that nanoscience and nanotechnology was the ultimate frontier because getting down a little bit very small, if you would, and one was not very clear as to how something that small becomes that big. In fact, now I have come to believe that smaller the thing, greater its impact is. So impact is inversely proportional to size. And if you were to look at quantum, is the next natural frontier. And so this is what we're going to talk about today. Professor Urbasi Sinha would talk about the deep scientific aspects of that mission, in particular that she's been working herself on quantum communication and has been very successful in that, as well as championing the overall quantum cause. The art and science of quantum is to make what is uncertain very certain and very useful. So whenever, when I was younger and I thought about quantum, he said it's because very uncertain, it can't be very useful. One couldn't be more wrong. How does one extract usefulness out of quantum is indeed the challenge. And there are so many mysteries and delights which are hidden in there that we would talk about. So while I would not talk about the scientific aspects, let me just say a little bit about the mission itself and why that this may be a kind of template for technology missions of the country. Um, we have had a predecessor to this particular technology mission coming from Department of Science and Technology, which is called the National Mission on Cyber Physical Systems. At that point, a few years ago, when it was launched 3 years ago, it's been the biggest technology mission coming out from the Ministry of Science and Technology. And now we have the quantum mission, which is worth about rupees 6,000 crores. It was announced already in the budget speech prior to when the virus struck us. So at that time, it was estimated to be rupees 8,000 crores. Again, easily making it to be a very ambitious mission that ever was launched by Ministry of Science and Technology. And we always thought, so when we were formulating this mission on quantum technology, we always thought that, look, India kind of lacks couple of things while thinking about launching new science technology on at the frontier, at the cutting edge. And what were those weaknesses? One, that we were just thinking about it too long before that the whole world actually moved on. So our processes and stuff were indeed slower than rest of the world. And that slowness gets manifested in things that move fast. It then, business as usual, science, technology, of course, it can wait and so on. But when things are exponential, as we talk about many exponential technologies today, whether it's cyber physical, which embodies artificial intelligence, machine learning, as well as the physical aspects of machines. So intelligent machines, thinking machines, decision-making machines, acting machines, and so on. When you're talking about exponential technologies, and the human mind always is linear with a small slope, so the two actually keeps on diverging unless we take special actions to keep them together. So here is exponentially going up, and here is small slope linear. So one can see clearly that that would be very hard to take control by human society and mind. So we must not be lagging in these things. It's about the time scale that we have for these things. The second aspect is that somehow our investment in these things is being a little bit subcritical. So while the subcriticality of investment and the criticality of catching up with time, these two aspects have been little bit of a weakness in what we do. However, in the case of quantum, we indeed started on time. So it's a little bit unfortunate that the COVID-19 came in between, and so 2.5 years were a little bit lost because certainly focus was shifting somewhere else, rightly so. But anyway, one is glad now that one is back on track and not with subcritical funding. So thinking about subcritical funding, another important aspect is that there must be capacity for absorption. And no matter what investment is done, if there is no foundation for it, then it's not going to work. There are two things that happen in science where things don't work or the investment is not fruitful, is when I have a bucket full of water and I throw it in desert or I throw it in the sea. Either way, it's not, it's going to do incremental aspects if you throw it in the sea, and it's going to do nothing at all if it cannot germinate the new shoots. So in the case of quantum, in fact, almost 4 years ago, 4.5 years ago, 5 years ago, even, a Department of Science and Technology already initiated an in-house foundation building program, which had investment of about in excess of 500 crores, which was a beginning. It started with one of the hubs of cyber physical systems and another a bunch of 50 projects which are distributed over the country. So what it was supposed to do is to produce that basic capacity, capability, foundation, if you would, that can absorb greater shock of investment of 6,000 crores, which is going to come now. So in a sense, this is a strategy by which one can seed things without actually them not working. So that's one aspect. Now, the the key objectives of the mission that we have today, the quantum mission, they are, if I were to, just read them, is to develop an intermediate scale quantum computer in 5 years going to 100 physical qubits, and in 8 years going maybe all the way to 1,000 physical qubits. Okay, so what it looks like, the way things are changing very fast. In fact, when we started thinking about the mission, 50 qubits was the benchmark. And IBM, some people stuff were thinking about that. But as I said, things are moving very rapidly. And so one wouldn't be surprised if very soon that we are getting into thousands of physical qubits. The major challenges there are is to maintain coherence in the face of disturbances that happen all around the world. And there are very many different approaches for it. The quantum mission actually envisages four different kind of basic scientific approaches for physical manifestation of qubits. Then to develop satellite-based secure quantum communications between two ground stations over a range of 2,000 kilometers within India, as well as long-distance secure quantum communication with other countries. So that certainly, as we know, that quantum communication is the future of communication in terms of it being being secure. Okay, so that's something which has already been happening, as I pointed out also in Professor Urbasi Sinha's lab and elsewhere, to develop intercity quantum key distribution over 2,000 kilometer with trusted nodes, develop multi-node quantum network with quantum memories, entanglement, swapping, synchronized quantum. It looks pretty formidable, but basically what it is, that using quantum, the principles of quantum, you're also developing a whole lot of devices and materials. So before we go, in fact, I should point out that there are four major verticals of this quantum mission, which is, of course, quantum computing, quantum communication, quantum sensing and sensors, and including the photonics, and the final one is quantum devices and materials. So that pretty much encompasses all the stuff that happens under the umbrella of quantum science and technology, especially science converting into technology. So then develop magnetometers with so on and so forth, the sensitivity, design and synthesis of quantum materials such as superconductors, novel semiconductor structures, topological materials, blah blah. Okay, so now the important aspect of this mission is its unique architecture, its unique structure and processes. Whole lot of these, in fact, have been borrowed from the earlier experience with the mission on cyber physical systems. So it had become clear at some point that the way we implement our R&D and indeed going beyond that was all in silos. So one of the weaknesses of that approach has been that here is a center for basic research. Here is sometimes even called Center of Excellence, and by all these very well-sounding names. But basically, traditionally, the approach has been that you make a center, and center is a geographic entity which is run by capable people, which is me and five of my friends, which is very good. Except that it's inward looking in the sense that it does not leverage all the resources, the knowledge resources, the infrastructural resources, the human resources, which are available elsewhere. A geographic center is not focused on a theme, on a solving a problem. It is focused on the expertise and capabilities of what is available over there. Now, of course, if we wanted to solve problems, if we wanted to have a big picture, a big problem, a big project, if you would, which not only has basic R&D, but also has translation to technology, to products, at the same time connects also with the startup ecosystem, in fact, has its own startup ecosystem. It also connects seamlessly with industry. Not only that, it can take money from industry, but can also give money to industry, which is a big thing for government missions, and also have flexibility and independence, which is required in order to very quickly and effectively implement what is it that you want to do. So there are a couple of principles. One is that of seamlessness. So seamlessness in terms of the geographic location. So in a sense, this is like a quantum wave. So it's not localized in space like a particle, but it's smeared all over, if you would. The second principle of being seamless, is that is not only focused on, hey, here's a center only for basic research, here is a center for developing technology, here is an incubator, here is some people who work with industry. So all of that is fragmented and become in different places which have no communication with each other and indeed no synergy with each other. So now the concept of hub is basically a thematic hub. So the hub actually is something like quantum communication. Now, this quantum communication hub defines several problems in its entirety as to what technology would be needed, what basic knowledge is needed, what products are needed, what are the industries that need to be seeded, what are the startups that can take off from there. All of this big picture has to be aggregated, and the hub has to be the custodian all of this knowledge, because one of the weaknesses we see in our missions is that there is no aggregator and there is no custodian, right? So obviously, ministry cannot be the custodian or aggregator of all of this deep knowledge. So where is it going to reside? How is it going to pass around? How is it going to be transported and utilized? Is a big challenge, and we hope to address some of it with this architecture that I'm going to talk about for another couple of minutes, and then we'll pass on this to the speaker for today, Professor Sinha. So what is it that we wish to accomplish in all of these missions? Uh, Oh, what happened there?
You're audible, Professor Sharma.
I am audible?
Yes, audible, visible.
Visible too? Oh
Yes,
my
yes.
God,
Mhm.
except to myself.
Yeah, we can
I'm
see
not.
you also.
Okay, so what happened is my computer was warning to restart, and I was trying to figure out where to tell it not to do so. Now, um, do I need to restart? Okay, okay, well, where are we? Okay, never mind. I'll get back to where the camera, etc. are, so I'm able to see the rest of the proceedings when we go forward. Oh, there we are. Okay. Yes, the architecture is like this. There is a hub, which I pointed out is the central processing unit, if you would. The hub has spokes, and spokes could be thought of as what we call centers or centers of excellence. The hub may have 8 centers of excellence, 10 centers of excellence. It depends on the needs and what are the sub themes of that hub. And of course, that these centers or the spokes would have to be chosen competitively. So, in a sense, there is a sense of competition within the hub and saying, look, who are the people who can lead the charge? In addition to that, we would recognize that there are also pockets of excellence outside of certain geographic boundaries. Let us say, okay, RRI here, IIT there, IISc there. These are all, recognized groups of excellence. But beyond that, there could be a state university, for example, there could be a university, there could be a lab where there is a pocket of excellence in a particular group. How do we bring them in the fold? And so that third level, the tertiary description of hub, is what I call a spike. A spike and excellence, if you would, which is like a Dirac delta, which is found somewhere localized, and we also need to be able to pull them in. The thing is hub and a spoke and a spike. So all of them connected to each other through the big picture. And the point is, okay, so it's like having a jigsaw puzzle. You make pieces of that jigsaw puzzle. You distribute those pieces. Who's going to distribute those pieces? Obviously, the wisdom behind the hub governance. So hub governance, which is a Section 8 company, to give greater flexibility in the operation of these things. Uh, um, Obviously that this is the Section 8 company, which has a board which is made up of industry, academia, and line ministries, should have the wisdom to say, look, what is it we want to do, how we want to do it. And of course, the overall framework, the overall vision comes from the Apex Committee, which has all the freedom and all the power, if you would, financial and administrative power, to be able to have a dynamic mission. It's not like, hey, this is not working, but what do I do? I can't shut it down. No, it has to be dynamic, right? So hubs, whatever people who are performing well, can receive greater thrust and funding, whereas those who are unable to deliver and make progress can be shut down. So bringing in all these elements is actually critical to the success of a mission like this. In particular, also engaging the industry, just to understand why we would need industry in a big way. Okay, if you were to make, let us say, a quantum computer, you are saying, okay, whatever number of qubits, who is going to do it? It's not going to be done in academia. So while academia can solve the basic problems, they can troubleshoot each component of such a machine. If you would, it can write different algorithms for it. It can do a whole lot of things like that, right? So as far as the knowledge partnering is concerned, of course, academia cannot be beat. On the other hand, I don't think even in the US or anywhere else, it is universities who are making computers. They never will. So it would be some company, some big company with great muscle who would actually be doing it. So unless we have them as partner and get our designs actually fabricated and put in there, the further progress or scale up would be very, very hard indeed. So we must understand, finally, let me conclude by saying that the success of these kind of missions critically depend on the wisdom of academia. Because in our earlier roles, when we were running a center and stuff like that, all that was required is that, hey, this ministry should just give me money. And then, they have defined actually what is acceptable, stuff in this project, and I'm responsible for that part somewhat. If I feel good about it, I may deliver even something. But on the whole, there was not a great deal of leadership and responsibility in those projects and centers. What we is this mission envisages is that the wisdom and the leadership that resides with the academic community, together with their partners like industry, line ministries, and even startups, that actually has to drive the mission forward, not some central authority, some ministry which may not have any great deal of real stakes, the deep vision, or a day-to-day motivation to succeed. Like I said, this is something which requires all of us to take control, to start doing things in a different way. As an example, that the extramural funding will actually come from hubs as envisaged by the Apex Committee and the Scientific Advisory Committee. So, who gets funded, when the money gets released, how the money allocation happens, and how that money is utilized, all has to be monitored not by ministry anymore. It has to be monitored in house by the mission. So, that's a great deal of responsibility about who to fund, not just my friends. Right, obviously. So therefore, one would have to develop this capability to formulate a mission, to make its components, to give these components for fulfillment at different places, to monitor them, and when the pieces come together, to make a big picture out of it and deliver. This is not a small thing because it requires a different way of thinking and behaving and doing. I remember that for the cyber physical mission, I have had several extended meetings with coordinators of those hubs and the directors of the institutions where those hubs are formulated. But despite a lot of dialogue and stuff, people would still not be sure. And I'm sure that even after implementation, there would be weaknesses which are basically related to the fact that, hey, he is my friend and I need to fund him or her. Okay, so that happens a lot. So we are not very diverse in our approach, and we often would miss the big picture. But as we gain more experience with this kind of architecture of doing things, I am sure that people would be greater empowered, would be empowered greatly, and they would use that power in order to succeed, to meet the objectives of the mission. Let me conclude there, and I wish the mission all the very best. I think it's a historical occasion to go forward with energy, with positivity, and win the day for us. Thank you very much.
Over to you, Professor Sinha.
Am I audible and visible?
Yes, you're
Yes,
audible.
thank you very much. And of course, I would like to thank, first of all, begin by thanking Professor Sharma for that very nice, very insightful, very holistic, introduction to the talk. I think you've already covered a lot of what I wanted to say. So it's good. Sometimes repeating something, maybe, we get through more. And I do remember the initial, when we were writing the draft project report for the national, at that time, NMQTA, which became National Quantum Mission, Professor Sharma was the Secretary DST, and his favorite joke would be the future is uncertain, future is quantum. And he began today also with that. So I'm glad that his quotes haven't changed. But then, I want to say that now I'm glad that the future is certainly quantum, right? So this is where we have the National Quantum Mission. So a slight change to that quote. So thank you very much for your support and enterprise, which made all this possible. And of course, the current Secretary DST, Professor Sri Gauri Chandrasekhar, for continuing that enthusiasm. And now we are here today. So with that, I would like to, of course, begin the talk by thanking, Ambassador Balakrishnan for the very, very kind introduction, Professor Chaturvedi for inviting me to give this talk, and Dr. Amit Kumar for all the support, throughout the last few days leading up to this talk. So, so of course, the title of my talk is Role and Significance of the National Quantum Mission in India's Development. And as was already discussed, the mission was launched in April this year, in fact on 19th of April, and this was the outlay for the mission. And the aim is to seed, nurture, and scale up scientific and industrial R&D and create a vibrant and innovative ecosystem in quantum technology in India. So essentially, by the launch of this National Quantum Mission, India has actually joined an extraordinary league of nations, which has its own national quantum strategy. And in fact, Professor Sharma mentioned that sometimes we have been late in doing things, but this time, I think we are still all right. I think we are pretty much on time. COVID has affected the entire world, so, we cannot blame ourselves for that. So I think if we do this right, and of course, we all have our own definitions of what is right, but then in some sense, a holistic right, I think we will achieve a lot in this mission. So having said that, it is quite clear I'm an academic, I'm a scientist, I do research and development, so my talk will have that flavor. It will actually talk to you. I'll tell you a little bit about the science that we are planning to pursue in the mission. But having said that, given the half an hour time frame, I've decided to take specific use cases and explain to you how, through these use cases, give you a flavor of how this mission is going to impact life as we know it. And so it is something very, very big. And so this is the idea I want to leave you with by giving you an example and a few examples of the varied sectors that we would actually impact by the National Quantum Mission. And of course, I would end by my own thoughts, for a couple of minutes on what I think would lead to the success of this mission in India. So that is how I will, plan my talk. But having said that, the first couple of minutes, I want to just remind ourselves that, while we're here discussing National Quantum Mission, quantum science and technologies, we have to remember that quantum science is something not very young. It's a very, very mature field. It has been there with us for, more than a century. And this is one of the famous quotes, another famous quote by another famous physicist, Richard Feynman, who said that, he thinks he can safely say that nobody understands quantum mechanics. But of course, several decades down the line, that may not be true. We do understand a lot of quantum mechanics, but then it is, quantum mechanics has certain elements about it which always lend itself to mystery and intrigue, in many of us. But then actually, it is these intriguing elements which make it amenable to the applications that we are here discussing today. And so having said that, the impact of quantum in daily life is not going to start with the mission. We have actually all these beautiful examples and many more, where we are already using quantum in our daily life. So we are, these are things which you all recognize, whether it's the transistor, whether it's the classical computer, the one that I'm speaking to you through, whether it's the MRI machine. These are all based on laws of quantum mechanics. So the laser, for instance, many of us get laser surgery, so various things, eye or whichever organ. So these have become commonplace for us. And so this is something which we actually owe to quantum mechanics. So we should remember that quantum mechanics is already impacting our daily life in a huge way. And so, with the mission and of course, with the possibilities, we are going to attack new problems. Of course, we have a very good base for it already in our country, but we are going to take it to the next level for certain applications which are not on this list, which have been made possible because of the advancements we have made over time in the precision and experimentation that we can now do. Okay, and so this is the difference. So this is what we call quantum 1.0, and now we are in quantum 2.0, the second quantum revolution. Quantum mechanics has had rich history and legacies. As an academic, I cannot just bypass this particular thing. That indeed, I might say that we have some of the biggest concentration of Nobel Prizes in physics that have been given to seminal discoveries in quantum over the last several decades, whether it's Niels Bohr, whether it's Louis de Broglie, and George Thomson, Davis and Germa. So, these are all examples of things which we use every day now. And these are all Nobel Prize winning work. But having said that, the question is, we have a diverse audience. What exactly is quantum? Is a question which keeps coming back to us. And the answer is not straightforward. So I will go back to this particular slide where I have shown you this only equation in my talk, which tells you that every particle, whether light or matter, has a wavelength associated with it. Okay, and so this wavelength is inversely proportional to what we call the momentum, which actually depends on the mass and velocity. So as you make the mass or the size of the particle smaller and smaller, what happens is at some point this wavelength, which is called the de Broglie wavelength after de Broglie, becomes comparable to the size, and then these effects, which we call quantum effects, start playing a role. They are always there, but if I or Professor Sharma were to suddenly run and hit ourselves against the wall, we would end up injured. We won't tunnel through. So because you see, we are not going to see this manifestation in our rather macroscopic existence, but an electron will. And so that is what, I mean, practically speaking, that is where quantum becomes relevant and important. And that is what we are, of course, going to discuss. And then these are all the other people, again, Dirac, Schrödinger, Heisenberg, Born, again, Nobel Prizes in physics in various things. And of course, Nobel Prize in Physics 2022 itself, which is the latest one, given to Alan Aspect, John Clauser, and Anton Zeilinger, for experiments with entangled photons establishing violation of Bell inequalities and pioneering quantum information science. And this is, of course, what gives rise to the National Quantum Mission. This is the kind of thing where, people have already taken the science to technology, shown what beautiful things can be done. This forms the basis for the beautiful things that we intend to do in the National Quantum Mission. And if you want to know more about the Nobel Prize this year, do have a look at this review article that I was invited to write, which has a lot of gory detail on the experiments that led to it. So now we go on to the mission. So the idea is that, we have a very good base for quantum mechanics already in our society. What we are going to now do is use these specific skills that we have developed with time to manipulate the quantum system in a way which is something, revolutionary. So whether it's quantum communication, computing, sensing, metrology, these are all possible now because of our the level at which, precisely we can manipulate the system, which is quantum information processing. So with this, we already heard, these are some of the specific objectives of the mission, which is in the domain of sensing, in the domain of materials. We have detectors and sources and other allied technologies for communication. As we know, it is to be implemented by the DST in partnership with other departments. So the specific deliverables Professor Sharma already mentioned. So we have these, different kinds of quantum computers. Now, one of the things is, we would say why we have these numbers here. Well, because of course we have to do it in a bottom-up approach. At the moment, we have 3-qubit machines in our country. So we have to, of course, scale it up to 50 and then go to 100 and then 1,000. And so these are not baby steps. It requires a big infrastructure, a lot of people coming together and in different platforms, because there is no winner yet as of now as to which one would be the future choice. So superconductors, semiconductors, ions, neutral atoms, photons, all would be there. And of course, the next 3 are to do with long-distance quantum communications, which is my core area. And here we want to increase the distance. And this is going to be obviously one of the use cases we will discuss a little bit, given my bias towards it. And then, we have the 4 thematic hubs, as was already discussed, and these are in these 4 domains. Just to, highlight that, having said that, the first 3 are the main verticals, and the materials and devices are more horizontal, because it will actually lead, feed to all 3. We will make materials and devices to enable all these other technologies. So it's kind of a horizontal. And of course, we would seed, nurture, and scale up scientific and industrial R&D, create a vibrant and innovative ecosystem, and lead to QT-related economic growth. Of course, that is what we want to see. And at the end of the 8 years, we would be very pleased, in making India a leading nation in development of quantum technologies and applications. So these are, the key deliverables for the mission. So what are the 3 main verticals? And again, the varied audience is in my mind. So I'll give you a one-line description of each of them to tell you what exactly they are aiming to achieve. The first one is quantum computation. Now, quantum computation is, of course, a very important research direction. And quantum computers are projected to be able to solve certain problems for which there is no efficient classical algorithm. But also some solutions will be exponentially faster than what is possible in classical computation. So the idea is we are, there are different kinds, and it's a limited set of problems we currently have right now, but that limited set can actually achieve a lot. And that is what we will go on to see as we go along. Then we have quantum cryptography, which is going to guarantee perfectly secure communication. And this is something which, of course, affects all of us. By making use of principles of quantum mechanics like superposition, entanglement, as well as Heisenberg's uncertainty principle. And finally, we have quantum sensing and metrology. This will again harness the delicate features of quantum systems, superposition, entanglement, tunneling, etc., to develop extremely sensitive sensors that can beat the limits of classical sensors. And here we can do magnetic sensing, have better MRI machines, maybe. We can go on to sensing, much below the ground to see where there is oil. There are lots of possibilities. And again, better clocks, more precision, higher precision clocks, which can, have a tremendous ramification in our navigation systems. So there are, these are the kind of areas which these things will affect. So if again, it's half an hour. So if you're interested in a little more detail, this is an invited comment that I wrote for Nature India, where I have given a summary of all these verticals and what we can sort of achieve in the National Quantum Mission. Now, having said that, as I said, my talk is going to be such that I'm going to pick up a few use cases and discuss them with you so that, at least in some things, where we are going to make an impact. So these are some of the sectors which quantum technologies will revolutionize. So one of them is, of course, communications. And then we have the energy sector, we have financial sector, we have health, with as well as drug design for health, and then the Sustainable Development Goals of the United Nations. And this is something which is kind of very important. Maybe you're aware that the United Nations has come up with these goals, which are required for us to, we need to meet these goals so that we can sustain ourselves as a society. So it's a global set of goals, right, which we need for our own sustenance as a community, as a society, and both in terms of life as well as in terms of economy. So these are the Sustainable Development Goals, and in fact, this is somewhere where we expect quantum technologies will have a major impact. Just one second. Excuse me. So now this is going to be the first use case that I want to actually discuss. Okay. So the Sustainable Development Goals are something which is being already much under discussion, and how quantum will benefit it. And we have what is called the Geneva Science and Diplomacy Anticipator, which is in Geneva, which has launched what is called the Open Quantum Institute. And the Open Quantum Institute is working on use cases on how we can make quantum technologies useful towards the Sustainable Development Goals. Okay, and so this is something maybe you're not aware of, and this is a very, very useful and novel and noble initiative. And I'm a member of the international task force that led to the launch in October 22, and now I'm an advisory board member for the Incubation Advisory Board, and this will happen in October 2023. And in fact, my institute RRI is a spearheading partner for this, and so we are deeply involved in this development. And so the idea is that, this actually brings us to this big question as to why we all should feel responsible for the applications of quantum computing. The first use case that I want to talk about is quantum computing. Okay, so quantum computing, we already heard, there are different things happening, different technologies, different levels of development. But already through these examples on screen here, you can see a lot of work has already happened into coming up with the usage of the quantum computers in real life problems. Now, that is what matters to us, right? Ultimately, in the end, we want to be doing something which is significantly useful in a vast array of domains. And quantum is potentially one of the most disruptive technologies. So this is, quantum for bio, and then whether it is going to be useful for the, aircrafts and Airbuses. And so all these things have already happened. And so what do we need to realize these promises of quantum computing? So first of all, as the mission is also mandating, there is a significant portion given for international collaborations, because, we need to accelerate R&D. We need to understand that we want to have inclusive development of quantum technology, because, we have most diverse cultures, mindsets, and problem-solving skills from all geographies. So obviously, we won't do this in silos. We will do technology development for our own nation, but then we will, of course, work in collaboration so that we don't get left out. And we don't reinvent the wheel, obviously, so to speak. So this is an important part. And then use it for good and humanity. So this is, of course, the progress towards the UN Sustainable Development Goals. And so in order to realize this full potential of quantum for humanity, we have this vision of the Open Quantum Institute, which is going to, and is already fostering these SDG developments, applications of quantum computing by bringing together quantum R&Ders, entrepreneurs, and innovation cells of UN organizations, okay? Providing global and equitable access to use a wide pool of private and public quantum computers through the cloud, educate to enable everyone to contribute and leverage quantum computing. This is also one of our main mandates in the mission, human resource development, because we are a very, we don't have, critical mass right now. So we really need a lot more young people to be educated and to join in various possibilities, and activate diplomacy to shape a multi-governance, multilateral governance of quantum for the Sustainable Development Goals. So having said that, if you're not already aware of this, you would think, it's all a bunch of words, and sometimes some of it seems like that, but this is not true in this case. Already use cases are being developed with the OQI, R&Ders and UN organizations. So I just wanted to pick up two examples here because they are in two diverse sectors. One of them is in the energy sector. Okay, so we know we've had industrial revolution, and so as a result of which we have a lot of exciting things happening. But one of the very not exciting things happening is that we have created a lot of greenhouse gases. So we are not a very clean environment right now. That is something we know, and that is why there's a big push towards these green energy initiatives and all that. So how can quantum help here? So one of the use cases that is being developed is in new carbon capture materials. So one thing we can do is we can change how we are generating energy, which already there's a lot of work going on. But the other thing we can do is come up with new materials which can absorb the carbon that is already there in the atmosphere. So if we do that, then we are actively cleaning the environment, so to speak. And so where are these new materials? This is where one of the biggest USPs of the current quantum computers comes in, that it can actually be used to simulate new materials. One of the big use cases for quantum computing is quantum simulations, okay? Because, this was the original motivation Richard Feynman had. He said that, nature is quantum, so we need a quantum system to simulate it. And so this is what we have gone back to again, and this is one of the big use cases, to simulate new materials, okay, because we have this huge simulation possibility now. And then once we do that, we get together with the material scientists and create them, and then of course deploy them. So this is the big plan. Use a quantum computer to do what it does well, and then collaborate with the other agencies to create it, and then have a new solution for energy crisis, in terms of actually cleaning the environment. So this is a simulation use case. The second one that I wanted to discuss is again related to what Professor Sharma said about the COVID-19. So it is something we cannot avoid in any online talk. So then here we go. So what was one of the main things which happened in COVID is that, we had a bit of a divide. So some of the nations, they came up very quickly with vaccines, and were able to, vaccinate a large portion of the population. In fact, India is definitely one of them, right? Like we've had a huge success in populating a large section of our population with the vaccines. But there are many nations which couldn't do that, right? So they couldn't come up with the vaccines on time. So what is our role now as a human being and as a society? We need to reach out to those nations and get the vaccines to them. So this is easier said than done. So first of all, which are the places which need it? Secondly, what is the transportation scheme? Third is a vaccine needs to be in a cold environment. It comes out of a fridge when you go into your vaccination center. So then temperature is an issue. Then it also expires. So within a certain date, you have to use it and all. So as you can see, one by one, there are many issues which are coming in, which increase the complexity of this, what is obviously an optimization problem. We need to optimize the methodology by which we can distribute, but it's not so simple. So optimization is one of the other big use cases for the current quantum computer. And so we have lots of such solutions. So one of these things is being also, developed to come up with the optimization of vaccine distribution. And of course, it ports to any other distribution problem. So these are actually things which are happening. And of course, with our quantum mission, when we come up with our own quantum computers, we will be tackling these problems and many more. But for now, we will also use the cloud-based facilities available to accelerate our knowledge in the software level as well, so that we are, ready, both software and hardware, by the end of the mission. So one of the things I wanted to really say is that, there are two common misconceptions about quantum among the people who don't really work with it. One is that it can solve everything, and the second is that it is all hype. And in fact, both of these are untrue. It cannot solve everything. It can solve many things. And so naturally, not all of it is hype. So, there is a lot of good things we can do using quantum. So let us focus on that instead of, having these extreme views, which will, of course, not be beneficial for our, mission going forward. So this is, the quantum computing use case. And this is something we are also working on, as was mentioned. We are working on developing our own photonic quantum computer, as well as working with cloud-based systems to develop many of these solutions. In fact, we are also working with the United Nations on some of these problems. Okay, so the second use case is, of course, something I have to talk about because that is our main, focus here at RRI, which is quantum communication. And in fact, this is something which is very easy to understand the need for. The computing one, I actually wanted to give you a flavor through specific work that is happening, which relates to problems that you are, familiar with, whether it's energy, food, health, so on. But here, it is about data security. So all of us are involved in data security, whether we like it or not. And so this is something which, again, if you want further understanding from a more popular perspective, again, you can have a look at this invited opinion piece in the Economic Times, which I wrote a couple of weeks ago. Okay, but why you should worry about it is something I can tell you now itself. So if you're buying things using a credit card, if you're buying things online, if you're voting, which we are all doing, and then our country's borders are being kept secure by the defense, right? So these are all examples of what we call strategic communication or personal data security. And so these are being done currently using what is called classical cryptography, which is being compromised by quantum computers. And so we need a solution. So what is this? These are all examples of things where we don't need security. You know, this is something commonplace we're doing all the time. But if we need security, what do? We just don't shout out the password to someone. What do? We take that password, we encrypt it using what is called a KEY key. The other party has some version of that key. He or she can then decrypt it, and then you can pass on the information. So there is a cryptography element involved in secure communication. So the most important thing here is, of course, the distribution of the key. Because if that key falls into the wrong party, hands of the wrong party, then of course our security is compromised. So the key distribution is crucial here. And this is an example of how things are done. And there are different sort of keys, private keys. An Enigma machine you must have heard of. Second World War was, it was used in Second World War. This is an example of how old this entire field is in terms of cryptography. Public key is something which we wanted to discuss further, because public key is something where we have a basis as a mathematical hardness of a problem. So what is wrong with classical cryptography? The problem is unconditional security is not possible. So for instance, this public key cryptography, one of the standard protocols is RSA protocol. That is based on mathematical complexity of factoring large numbers. Okay. Now, Peter Shor here, he comes up with an algorithm. He's already done that. Using quantum gates, we can actually change the hardness. So this is not sacrosanct. So just to give you a very, a simplistic example, this is something which we all can create very quickly. Just throw things on the ground and not worry about what we do later. But the thing on the right is something which takes a lot of time, to distribute, to iron, to put it in an order. So these are reverse problems, obviously. The right can lead to the left, but the left leading to the right is not the same time. So multiplication and factorization don't have the same hardness. And so quantum computers can break the hardness of the factorization problem. And so, computational resources grow very fast. Today's hard problem could be solved tomorrow using brute force attack. New algorithms can come for classical computers. I can have quantum computers, which of course is already happening. So my security should be independent of future advancements in computational power. So it should be future secure. If tomorrow suddenly I shouldn't see that there's nothing left for me in the bank, which is a possibility. So this brings forth the need for quantum security or quantum communication, where we are not using hardness of problems. We are using laws of quantum physics to solve this problem. Okay, and so that is where quantum key distribution comes in. These are the laws of physics we use: uncertainty principle, no cloning theorem, entanglement. Of course, I won't discuss details in this talk, but these are the sacrosanct principles we are using to make things secure. And you can see this is just an example of how the hardness can change from one kind of machine ability to another. And so why is it secure? Just a simple explanation would be that, as soon as an eavesdropper tries to copy some information in the middle or tries to tamper with it, she or he will even, leave a mark, and that would be detected because a quantum measurement always leaves a mark. And so that is how we would know, of course, with a lot more detail, that something has happened, and we will not use that run at all for the key distribution. So essentially, it's the laws of quantum physics which make it it's information theoretically secure, is what we like to call it. And so this is the status of QKD technology, maybe 2 to 3 years old, where you can see already there's a lot of research activity that is happening. And in parallel, there is a lot of companies that have come up, and now even a few startups in India, which are coming up with products for QKD. So this is one of those areas in which both fundamental research and technology research can go hand in hand. Okay, and it's already happening globally. Standardization is already happening globally. And this is the potential market for QKD. As you can see, this was done by my colleague a few years ago. So currently we are here, this is in millions of US dollars. And then in 10 years time, we expect to be here in terms of the projection model for how much of the market QKD and quantum security will dominate. And so this has been, of course, this something I can share with you if you're interested in this report. So what is the problem that we are now trying to solve in quantum security, which is also the mission's agenda? is the distance problem. So me and my student talking to each other using quantum communication is not very interesting beyond an academic thing. So we want to be able to talk to each other regardless of distance, right? And so if I were to talk to you, in a free space mode, and if you start moving away beyond the point, I won't see you because line of sight is limited because the earth is round. And so beyond a point, I will not be able to see you because of the horizon. So few 100 kilometers line of sight won't work. Okay. Then you'll say, why not use fibers? But then we have a problem because as we have fibers, these fibers, they lead to signal losses. We all know this, we all face it. I'm glad that I've not faced it yet. So then what happens is that after a certain distance, we put in a repeater mode. We call it, right? So we copy the signal, we boost it up. But this is something we can't do in quantum because of no cloning theorem. We can't just copy an unknown quantum state. So we need to come up with out-of-the-box solutions, whether it's satellite-based quantum communication, whether it is entanglement distribution-based relays and repeater technologies, or trusted repeaters. And these are the three main mission objectives for the National Quantum Mission. So we are actually covering all this ground in this mission. So over the next couple of minutes, I just wanted to give you an overview that, because of the varied audience here, also Professor Sharma has kindly already mentioned this, just with some examples that, we are not starting from scratch here in the National Quantum Mission. There is already a lot of work that has happened in several labs in the country in different domains. I'll use mine as a specific example to convince you that, there is a lot that has happened. Now this mission will just enable us to take it to the next step. It's not like we are going to start with ground zero. For many of these things that we plan to do. For instance, we ourselves are working on satellite-based quantum communication, chip-based quantum communication, quantum relay repeater. This is under this DST's Quest project, which was talked about, as well as different kinds of random number generation using quantum mechanics. And the satellite-based quantum communication project aims to establish quantum security between two Indian ground stations using an Indian satellite as a trusted node. And so we have achieved several ground-based milestones over the last several years. And now with this mission, we really look forward to, getting, sort of joining hands with other agencies who are looking at different aspects and now demonstrating satellite-based QKD as a part of this mission. And then, of course, attacking distance problems and so on and so forth. So these are some of the objectives, which have already been done. And so why is our experiment important? Again, this is a scientific detail. You might ask, China has done it, why are we doing it? This is a question we keep getting asked, so why not answer it now? So China has shown satellite-based quantum communications, but what they have done is they have taken an entangled photon source, it's a quantum source, let's say, which is in the satellite, and they have distributed the two photons to two different ground stations and done what they had to do. What we are aiming to do as a part of our project is actually what is called uplink-based quantum communication. So our photon source, basically our quantum resources remain on ground, which is very important because once you fly something, it's out of your, it's out of your purview. You can't just bring it back and align something and send it back again. So it's a huge resource. So we want it on ground. We have a lot more flexibility. We can bring in lots of new research elements by this kind of flexibility. Lot of tremendous scope for novel first in the world science. And of course, we started this project when we would never have dreamt of having a public lecture on a national quantum mission. So, we've done many things when that support was not quite so high. And so, we've done many things with the hope that we would have this mission. That is why I think there are very few people who are more pleased than us on the launch of the national mission. Because, now we can see all this coming to fruition in a large way. So we have done the free space protocol, the first one in India, which actually has higher rates than the NASA results, which were the original record before our experiment. We have done the first demonstration between buildings. So you see, we talk about satellites, but if you keep doing things within the lab, it's very, very impractical. So we have to go out. We have to communicate between buildings. We have to face the atmosphere, so to speak. Then we have to realize that our satellite is not going to remain stationary. It's going to move. So we have to come up with a solution where we can communicate with something which is moving. And we have already done that earlier this year. We have come up with software for this project. We have also come up with a very recent result where we can help mitigate problems the atmosphere brings in towards polarization issues in satellites. So these are all some of the key results which we already have. We are very well poised now towards the next level. And I must say that, this is something which we are very pleased with, that, with these efforts that we have done, we've received a lot of appreciation from, popular media, industry, as well as the government, which is rare. right? So then this means that our mindset is already very well poised to support scientists for this mission, which is what we really hope will happen over the next 8 years as well. The work that we have done has been getting the support. And this is, for the sake of the people who are not from my field, which is most of you, I think, that, these things, this is how things look in the lab. We work with optical components, we align them, we set up our Alice and Bob within, different labs, then we shoot out the photons into the atmosphere, goes across campus, goes to a new lab, which has the receiver station and so on. So this is how we do things, actually. And these are real, devices which exist in my lab and other labs which are working on these problems. Okay, and so again, pleased with the the support that we have been getting. And so this is an example of what we may want to fly eventually. Okay, so this is the entire module. It has the receiver, it has the quantum stuff, it has optics, optomechanics, electronics. We have been able to communicate with this. And so now going forward, what we have to do with support from our agencies is miniaturize it, optimize it further, and then bundle it up and fly it in a satellite. Okay, and so we are already at this stage that we can now, with the mission and the renewed support, people like us can actually do satellite QKD with the efforts from various people coming together. Okay, and so again, this is one of our things. So basically, to the last couple of minutes, I went back to the same slide that I started with. So as you can see, what we have gone through is all these examples over the last 20-25 minutes. We've talked about communications, talked about the energy sector, the financial sector, the health and drug design, and of course, sustainable development goals. So all these and several more walks of Indian lives will benefit from the National Quantum Mission. And Indian government initiatives that would benefit from the mission would be, in fact, all of these, right? Make in India, Digital India, Skill India, Stand Up India, Startup India, Self-Reliable India, as of course the Sustainable Development Goals, which is also one of our key government initiatives. So I would like to end with this particular paragraph, which is from my article that I already talked about, which the DOI is here if you wanted to download. This is my personal thought on how we could make this mission a success. My belief is that in order to make India quantum ready at the end of the mission, we need to ensure that scientists are empowered. Okay, so we have been working hard to reach this stage. So we have to remember that, and Professor Sharma said this beautifully, that this will form the basically the epicenter for the mission, right? And then we have all the industries and the agencies coming together. But without the scientists, I don't think we will have a quantum mission. Because ultimately it is quantum science is very science, right? It's so something we need to remember. The mission governing board needs to ensure that major resources are allocated to labs with demonstrated excellence and proven competence in each of the 4 verticals in both national and international arena. With the launch of the mission, we have had a lot of discussion, and many people are coming forward, with claims. There we need to be able to distinguish between sustained efforts and sudden ones. Mission Governing Board also needs to ensure that they nurture early career researchers. We are a very small community still. We are a quantum community, literally. So we really need to expand our workforce. So they need the support for capacity building. You cannot say, oh, this lab has already done QKD. Why do you need to do it? Of course, we need to have it across the country for us to survive and sustain as a mission. A mission which places its importance on capacity building and developing equivalent competencies as other more advanced quantum nations, but also towards novel R&D. We cannot forget the novel R&D. We can't just keep doing what others are doing. This will enable us to lead, which is what we really want to do in niche areas by the time the mission is over. So, our mission must aim to be competitive, ambitious, further knowledge and develop technologies for societal benefit, while understanding that in the domain of quantum magic, there may not always be miracles. So, we may get carried away by the quantumness of it all, but please remember, it's all based on very well formulated math and science, and it takes a bit of time. So we need the first 3 years that we have planned, to develop this capacity overall, the next 2 years to have the technology transfer, and the last 3 years for, all these beautiful technologies to be relevant to our practical scenarios. So, okay, so I would like to thank you for your time, and I think I was on time.
Well, thank you very much, Professor Sinha, for a very interesting presentation and rich ideas.
Okay.
I will, with the permission of the chair, I will read out some of the questions which have come through the chat box.
I'll
And
stop
I hope,
sharing screen. Yeah. Yes.
yeah, you can stop.
Yes,
So here is
Sharma.
one question. Yeah. Professor Sharma, can I go ahead with the chat box questions?
Yeah, please, absolutely, go ahead.
So here's one question from Mr. Neelkant Kundu. Tentatively, when is India's quantum satellite planned to be launched by ISRO?
So,
Then
so should I
would you
take
like
that
to continue
question?
with the, or
Yeah, oh, there's a separate question
yeah,
on that.
sure.
Yeah, no, so the satellite launch, I mean, of course, it is, I don't know whether there'll be one Indian quantum satellite. That part is not quite clear yet. So our project, of course, has been going on for 5 years. So we are hoping that, we would reach that competency in the next few years. So it will be very much in sync with the mission timelines that we have projected for the 3, 5, and 8 year milestones that we have projected for satellite-based quantum communication. So we are in sync with that. But there are 1 or 2 other groups who are also developing competencies of various aspects of satellite-based quantum communication. So I'm hoping that we can all get together and then plan one satellite in the next 3 or 4 years, which can host all our payloads in some sense. That would be my hope, that then we can actually simultaneously demonstrate many ideas, which somebody's trying to emulate the Chinese one, which is of downlink QKD, which is also something we should do. But as I said, ours is aimed at an uplink-based approach. So that has not been done earlier globally. So if we can actually combine and ensure that these are done, with equal impetus, then we should be able to do this in the next 3 to 4 years. At least we should be able to do this. But of course, ISRO has to step in and give us the satellite and the launch. We are not going to do that. None of the academics are going to build a satellite and launch it, obviously. But then we are hopeful that with this national mission, and this being one of the main key deliverables picked up for the national mission by the competent authorities, now we will go there more quickly.
Thank you. Can I move to the next question from Dr. Amit Kumar? A NASCOM report says that quantum technology can add US $300 billion to the Indian economy by 2030. How do you see the potential of quantum technology contributing to the Indian economy? In which sectors?
So does Professor Sharma want to take it first?
Oh, I think I missed the question. I think this was about, is there a UN agency
No,
taking this up?
No.
No.
This is the potential of quantum technology contributing to the Indian economy, and in which sectors?
So I mean, clearly the lowest hanging fruit is related to secure communications, and I'm sure that industry can pick it up. Why even the White House line, but all our lines need to be secure. So if this was available at affordable cost, a whole lot of people can subscribe to such a service. So while I'm not an expert in saying that this is going to happen when, or it is indeed going to happen, but certainly communication sector, whether it is governmental communication sector, whether it is industrial communication sector, and then finally, perhaps going down, percolating down to citizens communication sector, that this could be, would translate into economic impact. Also, don't forget, we have very soon, a lot of IoT communication that is happening, which is machine to machine communication. There's also communication to secure your critical infrastructure. So all of those sectors, I think, could tremendously gain from secure communication. You don't want machines to be taken over or railways to be taken over and made a zombie and all of those things. So I think the impact perhaps would be largest over in that sector.
Maybe I can add to that answer. So of course, it does please me immensely that Professor Sharma agrees that my main sector is something which would benefit the economy first. But then I would like to say that, other than that, we also have the quantum sensing, which is another important thing, which we should, which will benefit, in a shorter run, I would say, because, if we had these portable magnetometers, which could then, sort of be used in our MRI machines, and then if we could have the atomic clocks come up, which could then, so this is the navigation would be affected. So that is another sector which definitely is going to benefit also in a not very long scale. And of course, we might all agree that the hardware-based quantum computing will probably come in later, in terms of the larger number of qubit scenarios where we can actually do the more complicated problems. But we need to ready ourselves by developing our software, because we need to have algorithm experts. We don't have that many, so we need to increase that community also, so that they can use the cloud now, and then we can develop our own. We can use the algorithms on our own quantum computers. So I think that would be the order which I would also say. And other than railways, our hospitals, we need to keep our patient data secure. So there are, the data security transcends things. And so we ourselves are working with the Indian Navy to come up with solutions for data security for the, armed forces. So that is naturally going to be the most widespread. But then these are the other things which we cannot forget.
Yeah, I agree. And also the defense sector, in terms of sensors, for example, DRDO has a lot of interest in it. They are one of the partners in this mission, as is ISRO. And so they are both putting in substantial resources from their end. In addition, being the partner to this quantum mission, about rupees 2,000 crores worth of contribution is coming from these ministries outside of the Ministry of Science and Technology. So it's just not that, that's just the tip of the iceberg. That I'm sure that there is even a greater thrust and focus on these issues in defense related sectors.
Thank you, both of you. Now I find that there is a flood of questions on the chat box. So let me, some of them are very technical and specific, but some of them are very general. So one of them is from Joint Secretary NEST from the Ministry of External Affairs, saying that you mentioned about the need for diplomacy to shape multilateral governance of quantum technology for the SDGs. Could you elaborate a little more on this and how the Ministry of External Affairs could help in this?
Yes,
so this is about your idea of diplomacy for governance of quantum for SDGs.
Yes. So I can definitely elaborate on that. So, and in fact, this is something that, it's coming from the right person here. So, so we really, so we are, of course, scientists who are working in quantum technologies. And so we know what we are doing. And so we are going ahead. But at some point, some of these applications that we have for quantum technologies is something that is not just a lab specific application. This is actually, relevant to diverse sectors. For instance, whether we talk about energy, whether we talk about health, food. So these are things which, we don't work on as primary motives, right? But then these are sectors which will be benefited from it. So now it is very important that the scientists and the diplomats can actually have one forum where they can discuss with each other, because sometimes we realize that we talk in a language which does not really appeal to the diplomacy sector, and the diplomats have their own language which we don't understand sometimes we blame each other also for our respective points of view. So the whole point of this JESDA's Open Quantum Institute initiative is to have the JESDA is Geneva Science and Diplomacy Anticipator. So what they do is they see which sectors would benefit from the scientists and diplomats starting to talk to each other already now, so that when it becomes even more critical in future, we don't talk at cross purposes. Because, we may want something, we may say, okay, this is what we need to make this research happen. But then maybe, for instance, in security, for instance, we may not be at a liberty to collaborate with some countries because it concerns our national security. And so then, that is somewhere, that is because of our, not because of science, but it is because of our geopolitical situation. So, in some sense, if we could actually have a forum where different countries, scientists and diplomats could come together and listen to each other's concerns, alleviate them, and then work together, then the idea would be that few years down the line, we would have a proper policy. And this is actually motivated by AI. So a lot of this discussion that has happened in quantum from the JESDA perspective is also motivated by how AI, was not was something which was even science fiction some time back, and suddenly it has become so real for all of us. It's Professor Sharma's favorite topic, I know that. But then having said that, this is one of those things which has become suddenly so real that today my student is using ChatGPT to make the introduction of a paper better. I mean, it has just reached us suddenly. So now the question is, while we are, of course, making use of it for good purposes, it may not always be true. So what is good and what is bad? What is the good usage of some technology and what is the harmful one? So these discussions need to happen before it hits us. And then we don't know how to actually have the governance and control the not so positive uses. So that is where this science diplomacy anticipation is coming from. And in fact, I can have a separate discussion because I'm representing India on this forum. I'm very happy to have separate discussion with the with the person who's just asked this question to discuss more on what all has happened. Sorry, Professor Sharma, are you raising hand or?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, come in, right.
Yeah, please.
Yeah, so this is very interesting and important question about how diplomacy and science intertwine. So of course, RIS has been big on science diplomacy aspects, and they've done a great job. I recall many discussions on that topic. Science diplomacy is to leverage science for diplomacy. So, for example, if you have something to offer, well, you can barter it for something else or for within science or something else. So, science diplomacy, is a very good instrument, but so is diplomacy for science. So, which doesn't happen as often from diplomatic community. But when you are looking at cutting edge technologies or even science, not so much science, because it's freely publishable in journals. But when you're looking at technology and products, and you want to have access to them, diplomacy would be one of the useful tools. And now to give you an example, when we started this cyber physical mission in DST, before that, there was no India specific program in NSF, National Science Foundation of the USA. They just did not see the need for it. They said, we got everything we need from India. We may have strategic programs from some other countries, but they never had in the entire history of India dedicated program. But as soon as we put in hubs of cyber physical systems, they kind of wake up and they said, yeah, there's a specific India specific program that if American scientists were to work with one of these hubs, which they have identified in cyber physical systems, then they would give them $100,000. I mean, extra money in addition to whatever they are getting from NSF to do work. But to work specifically with Indian hubs, they would earmark another $100,000 for them to do that. So this is an example of how science has international dimensions, and especially if you begin to do well in science, it would attract attention, and there would be more people who, including industry, global industry, they may wish to pair up. I do recall that when there was talk about, and indeed the formulation of the quantum mission was going on, all the global giants in this area, they had all come to meet and say how interested they are in partnering with such an activity. Certainly, the quantum mission has a very global footprint and dimensions. Now the question is also, as Urbasi was saying, look, who do you work with? Remember that when the situation is asymmetric, then it is usually the stronger partner that has a greater benefit from collaboration, because one is able to turn that into a commercial activity with economic impact right away. And it has nothing to do only with science. It has to do with what muscle our industrial sector offers. A classical example is, look, Raman may have been the champion of Raman effect, also a quantum mechanical phenomenon. But all the technology that came out from Raman principle has not impacted Indian economy at all. It has contributed only to the economies of the other world and whoever actually has an industrial muscle. So that is an important thing to remember. So while we partner in an international way, we have to be a little bit careful about what is it that we are giving away and what is it that we receive. Now, some of that is aspect of science diplomacy, and some of that is aspect of diplomacy for science. And I think scientists alone, because it's clear that they have to focus on their research in their lab. They cannot be aware of the greater geopolitical dimensions. So it is good, it's necessary that for the overall good that diplomats and scientists work together, especially in critical technologies.
Thank you. Yes, indeed, we are aware of what JESDA has been doing in Geneva, and we do follow what they are doing in quite detail. And our RI Science Diplomacy Program is also quite involved in at least these issues which come up with any new emerging technologies, whether they are AI, whether they are gene editing, all kinds of things.
Let me give you an
Now,
amusing little example of some from
have a
experience.
number.
Oh, sorry, I thought you had okay. Please go ahead,
Yes.
Ambassador.
No, yeah. There are a large number of questions, so I have taken the liberty of clubbing some of them which have a common theme. One of them is, these are all from youngsters. They say, how can MTech nanotechnology students get involved in the quantum mission? Is there any book which I can start reading about quantum computing? Is there any workshop on quantum computing as part of the mission? And are there internship opportunities for budding computer science undergraduates in any of the parts of the mission? So I think there's a lot of enthusiasm among our youngsters to somehow get involved in the quantum mission. So over to you, Professor Sinha.
Yes, actually, as I was saying, one of the, other than, of course, the research and the development and the technology development, we have a big focus on human resource development as a part of this mission. And so we are going to have, lots of different kinds of summer schools and, longer schools to, and then we, of course, once the mission actually formally starts, we will know exactly how we will do it, whether it will be in a physical location, whether it is going to be online so that different people can come together. And, so these are all, but then these are things which have been much well highlighted in one dedicated chapter of this draft project report, which is quite big. But then it is all there. And having said that, the MTech nanotechnology, yes, of course, that is very relevant, especially, directly relevant, I would say, to quantum materials vertical, because, that is much related to, tools of nanotechnology towards making different kinds of devices and materials for quantum. But having said that, it is also very relevant to any hardware building that we're doing for computing or communications. So, there is a lot of focus on building things. So while nanotechnology, MTech may not have an optics element, but that doesn't matter. If you are actually interested in building something with your hand, then you can pick up different architectures as one goes along. So I think there is a lot of benefit to such an MTech in our the kind of things we do. Just to give you an example, in a satellite QKD project, while of course I have students with me who are working on the physics problems, right, on quantum physics problems, but I also have somebody who's an astrophysics PhD who's looking at atmospheric elements. Then I have communications engineers, I have electronics communication engineers, then control systems engineers. So it actually is a little ecosystem by itself of like 10 people. Not all of them, maybe 3 or 4 from the physics, but rest of it from this, and very allied sectors which come together to solve a bigger problem. So indeed, quantum, while quantum physics itself is very important, there are lots of techniques which we use to solve our problems, which rely on expertise which is not quantum. And so that is why this is beautiful, because different types of students can find themselves contributing. Well, one thing you need to be is enthusiastic and willing to learn. You have to adapt and learn, but then I'm sure young students find it much easier to do that. we stop learning as we grow older. So I mean, I think that is the short answer to the. I mean, you know, and then of course I can discuss more in detail offline on what all are planned in this from the mission perspective. The book is Nielsen and Chuang's book on quantum information and computation. So that is, I would say, still the Bible for starting.
Bible.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. I think this demonstrates that an outreach aimed at young university students would be quite useful for everybody. So I will go to the last question, which is because we are running out of time, we must wind up. This is coming from people who are asking, what is the UN agency or the multilateral institution which is most closely getting involved in quantum technology, regulatory and international discussions? Is there any multilateral agency which is in the forefront of this?
Yes, so the one that definitely comes to mind is ITU. So I mean, you know, the International Telecommunications Union. So they actually, so I'm a part of a focus group from the ITU, which is looking at standardization of quantum technology. So obviously that is one thing that the UN is definitely playing a big role in helping come up with global standards for various things that we are making in quantum, so that we know that, so that we can talk each other's language. So what do we mean by a QKD system? So, you know, these are some of the specifics that one needs to fulfill. It's like an ISI standard for quantum. So there is HC, which is from Europe, and then there is ITUT, which is of course from the United Nations. So that is one of the things that they're definitely looking at. But then other than that, there are many UN organizations, as I was mentioning in one part of my talk, who are in active discussion with, you know, quantum technologists to come up with solutions to use cases in varied sectors. And so whether it's the Red Cross or, you know, so these are also there, but they are more for their specific use case related problems. But ITUT is definitely doing this, you know, has a larger initiative towards standardization of quantum technology.
Thank you, Professor Sinha. Professor Ashutosh Sharma, do you want to have any closing comments before I do the formal thank yous?
Now that I think that this has been a very, very informative webinar, not in the sense of quantum information, but classical information, conveying the quantum aspects, which is very good. I just hope and wish that there are more webinars, seminars of this kind brought in by RIS and all the team that's behind it. We would certainly like to see more of cutting edge science, technology, innovation as it impacts life and our future being done more and more. Thank you very much all for doing this. Please go ahead.
Thank you. Both of you have contributed to this webinar, and I see from the number of participants who registered that there's a lot of interest. So I think it's a good sign. Associating with this webinar. And thanks to all the participants who took the time to register and remained actively engaged. We look forward to more such events in the future. So once again, thank you, all of you, and goodbye.
Thank you very much as well. Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.